Hi, it's Mindy from Astrology.by.love. Thanks for hanging with me today. So today we are talking about Carole Baskin from the Tiger King. Carole is super duper special. We all got to see that on the documentary. So this is Carole's birth chart. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Carole was born on Tuesday, June 6th, 1961 in Bexar, Texas, Bexar. If you want to go and follow along on, I got this on Astro.Dance, so I got this printed off. And I don't know her time of birth, but there is still plenty to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I thought when I saw Carole's chart was yikes. So Carole has a YOD showing off thinking and obsessing about wealth. And then she has a T-square that shows she has struggles in the love department. I know this is not a surprise, but here is the YOD. It's the green dotted lines that come to that skinny triangle. So there's the YOD. And then the T-square, or the red, it's the red triangle right here. So, and those are the two things we're going to be talking about today. So, anyways, let's go ahead and talk about Carole's love life first. So at the apex of her T-square and her YOD is her Jupiter in Aquarius at almost 7 degrees. So here it is, 656 degrees, Jupiter in Aquarius. So it's at the point of the YOD, and it's also at the point of the T-square. So Jupiter in Aquarius is a fortunate placement. Jupiter or Aquarius is mostly concerned with the universal and the collective. Aquarians normally have large amounts of friends and friends of all types, and they have a gift for pulling people together, and then they also are good at keeping the herd, keeping the group at peace, kind of making everyone happy. So Aquarians also a little bit quirky. They march to their own drum, yet somehow really don't freak society out about it. So they're really good at fitting in and doing their own thing. So with Jupiter in this sign, Carole is able to make a lot of money by bringing people together in a quirky way that pacifies the masses. So, tigers are definitely an unusual thing. She marches to her own beat doing that. And with Jupiter in Aquarius, if she can be innovative and spiritual in this quirky universal pursuit, all the better. People with this placement do well running charities. So Jupiter is the planet of abundance and spirituality, expansion, higher education, foreign travel, and wealth. In Vedic astrology, Jupiter is said to represent one's husband and who a woman would do best with. Now, I'm going over Western astrology. I'm just mentioning that point of Vedic astrology because I've seen it kind of play out. So, just, pull the best from both of them. As we can see with the two squares that form the T-square, Carole struggles with this abundance. So, a T-square is when 3 points come together. There's two 90-degree angles and an opposition. So these are the 90-degree angles. You see Venus to Jupiter, and then you've got Neptune to Jupiter, and then Neptune and Venus are opposite each other. We've also got Jupiter and Saturn here at the apex. So, and the red lines, show the difficulties. So the 90-degree angles are red lines, and then also the oppositions. The opposition is a red line. So, Carole's Jupiter, her abundance energy, is held back and frustrated by both her Venus energy and her Neptune energy. Now, back to this Jupiter, it is loosely conjunct Saturn. Very loosely. It's about 7-degree difference. And Saturn's also out of sign, which means Jupiter and Saturn are they're near different constellations. They're in different signs, different energies. However, Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is a fortunate thing. Some astrologers refer to it as the millionaire maker. I personally see that being more Jupiter trine Pluto, but Saturn conjunct Jupiter is still a very fortunate thing. So, with it out of sign, it's not as powerful as it would be, say, if they were in the same sign or much closer than a 7-degree conjunction. But, that energy is there, and you can tell. Great abundance is important to Carole. So, especially when it comes to her husband. So Saturn a lot of times can represent male figures in one's chart as well. And so, unfortunately for Carole, with the exception of her moon, all her love and relationship planets have difficult aspects to each other. I'm not talking about Carole's moon because I don't know her time of birth. The moon can move as much as 13, 14 degrees in a day. And so that's a pretty wide range. It's showing in the chart. The chart automatically calculates it for noon. So, we can see here it's showing Carole's moon to be at 26 degrees. We don't know if that's true or not. And you could be as much as, 7 or 8 degrees on either side of this moon. So she could have either an Aries moon or a Pisces moon. And so we're just not going to talk about the moon. But, let's see here. But yeah, so I'm still talking just about the T-square, the Venus, the Neptune, Jupiter, Saturn. So, when Venus is square Jupiter, now this is probably the least difficult of all squares you can have in your chart. So, this can cause an indulgence in shopping or overeating or being lazy, or some kind of excessive Venus indulgence to the point that it causes hardships in abundance. Typically, a little bit of self-control fixes it. And it also, this Venus square Jupiter causes like an inborn sort of tension. It allows for a creativity so that the native can typically overcome the problem or wants to have the self-control to fix it. It's still a process, but this is the easiest square that there is to overcome. This is about it's about 6 degrees away, so it's even easier to overcome when the energies aren't as tight. But unfortunately for Carole, Saturn's involved, and so her Venus is at 0.47 of Taurus, and her Saturn's at 29.14 of Capricorn. So that's a really tight square. With Jupiter and Venus being the easiest square there is, Venus square Saturn is probably the most difficult. So when Venus is square Saturn, it's difficult to know your self-worth. So there's some, pretty big insecurity problems there. And, strangely enough, in Carole's chart, Venus is in its home sign of Taurus, and Saturn's at 29 degrees of Capricorn. Venus is at 0 of Taurus. So in this square, Saturn is stronger and more powerful. The degree that Saturn is at is called the anaretic degree. So that's anytime a planet or a point is at 29 degrees, the 29th degree is called the anaretic degree. And there's various opinions and theories on this. I go along with the story that a planet's energy is built as it goes through the sign, and at the 29th degree, it's the strongest it can be. It's learned all the lessons, it's absorbed everything, it's a master at that point. And so the 29th degree tends to be the strongest of the sign. And like I said, Saturn's in its home sign of Capricorn anyways. And so this square not only keeps Carole from feeling her self-worth, it causes her to feel alone and isolated, even when she's not alone and isolated. And with Saturn and Capricorn, this also allows her to feel attracted to emotionally distant older men. So It's not really great. So Carole's Venus is also opposite Neptune. Now this is incredibly loose, but we're going to talk about it anyways. When Neptune is opposite Venus, once again, one struggles with low self-worth. So they don't see themselves clearly. They don't see themselves as valuable. And they can tend to make constant sacrifices for their partner who they idealize. And a lot of times, Neptune's very dreamy, fantasy-like. You don't see things clearly. You see them either as a whole lot better or a whole lot worse, depending on how it's aspected. But, when you are under Neptune's spell, you typically see things as fantastic, and then all of a sudden, in an instant, the veil's lifted, and you're like, ah, what was that? And, so this has happened to Carole in her love life. And, remember, her Venus is in Taurus. Taurus has a temper. So, with Taurus, it's like that raging bull. It builds and builds and builds and builds, and then it explodes. And, this is showing me Carole's definitely blown up at her lovers a time or two, especially after Neptune's fantasy has fallen away. Mars is also square Neptune in Carole's chart. So right here, Mars is in Leo, sign of the big cat. And it is square Neptune. It's, once again, incredibly loose. But when someone has Mars square Neptune in their chart, they tend to be attracted to a partner with some kind of dishonesty around them. So, that dishonesty and confusion can come out, maybe they're a drug addict, maybe they're a scam artist, or perhaps, as in, Carole's missing husband, perhaps they're a womanizer and they cheat all the time. These are things that someone with Mars square Neptune is attracted to. And they see their man as ideal, unflawed, and then all of a sudden Neptune's fantasy wears off, and Mars, the warrior planet, and flamboyant Leo in Carole's chart explodes. So anyway, so the last piece of this messy T-square that I want to talk about is Neptune square Saturn. So this is loose too. And, everything that I have talked about has been loose. And the looser the connection, the easier it is to overcome. These are things that probably, these loose connections are stuff that probably plays out in her mind. The energy's not strong enough to compel her to act. But, with the difficulty of Venus square Saturn, I mean, that's enough. So all these are just kind of add to her kind of head crazy. But back to Neptune square Saturn. So this square creates just challenges and struggles for Carole to get what she wants. So she goes after something, and she sees herself, she's almost there, she's almost finished, and then it's pulled back. It's like when you are told, the end of the project's going to be Monday, and then it's pulled back to Thursday, and then Thursday you find out it's Friday. And it's just always, and this is involving this T-square for her love life. And so what she has wanted in her love life has always been just a little out of reach. She'll go for it, she'll work for it, she'll get frustrated. She sees it as being fantastic and wonderful. And then she gets to it, and it's like, did I really struggle for that? As an interesting point, I'm not going to do Jack Lewis's chart. Jack Lewis is Carole's missing husband. But his sun was at 9 degrees of Taurus. So almost exactly opposite. So it would have been about here. Almost exactly opposite her Neptune. Her Neptune's at 9 degrees of Scorpio. So that shows that, when someone's sun is opposite your Neptune, you see them ideally. They're nothing like how you see them, but you see them as being an ideal. And so then at some point, Neptune's fantasy drops, and you see them clearly as who they are. So who she thought Jack was, he was actually the opposite of it. And so when the fantasy fell down, she's disappointed. And unfortunately, his sun was also square her Jupiter. So her Jupiter was at, 6 of Aquarius, 9 of Taurus. So the fantasy fell. She no longer had, she saw him as, oh my gosh, this is the opposite of who I thought he was. And then she's realizing, oh my gosh, he is frustrating my abundance and my ability to be abundant and expansive. And, they were not a good fit. They were not compatible. And, with Carol's close square, the Venus square Saturn, she's not ever really going to be attracted to people who are good for her. That's how that energy is going to play out in her life. And, she may, we saw the current husband singing to her. I don't know how much of that was for TV and how much of that was real, but, she's probably going to struggle with feeling love and getting love the rest of her life. That's just one of the struggles she has right now. So, anyways, let's move on and talk about her YOD. As you remember from the Doc Antle video, the YOD is a destiny point. So it points towards an uncomfortable path that the native will be compelled to follow in order to shift the world around them. So anytime you see a YOD in someone's chart, they're going to change the world in some way. It may not be world renowned. It may just be their community. It may, be the state. It may just be the little neighborhood, but it's going to be the thing that people talk about. Things shift. They are at some point in their life going to change things. And so part of Carol's YOD is her Pluto in Virgo. So that's right here, 5 degrees, 39 minutes. You see that. So that's where the Pluto in Virgo is. So Pluto is considered a malefic planet. However, it is the most positively aspected planet in Carol's chart. So you can see here, Pluto has a sextile to Neptune. It's got a trine to Venus, and it has a sextile to Mercury. And so, Pluto is it's the planet of transformation. So it's not necessarily malefic, but the way it transforms people a lot of times is harsh. So it's like you have the rug pulled out underneath you and you break your leg, and then you go to a top-notch surgeon and he winds up being fantastic and you marry him. Like, you would just much rather have met this person on the street, but Pluto pulls the rug out from underneath you and breaks the leg. That's just an example. But, traditionally it's said Pluto's known as, the planet of life and death, but it's the transformation. And, Pluto was in the sign of Virgo from 1958 to 1972. And remember that Virgo is the traditional ruler of the 6th house. So we've talked about the 6th house quite a bit in this Tiger King series. So, the 6th house, house of servants, house of daily routines. And it's the place in our chart that shows us about our pets, and everybody in this series, and also talked about it in Michael Jackson, who himself owned, tigers and lions and stuff. Virgo in the 6th house is the part of your chart that tells us about pets. So, also note that she does have the Chiron right here, 6 degrees of Pisces, opposite Pluto at 5 degrees. So it's not exact like her good buddy Joe Exotic, but it's still prominent. So it still shows that, there's some type of hysteria or mania in Carol's life at some point. And, we saw that in the documentary in regard to her husband's disappearance, not to mention the whole documentary. But, it just shows that there's going to be a stir or something like that around in her life at some point because of that. So, anyway, so while Pluto is this, dark, obsessive planet of transformation, and, it's feared by most, this planet has been Carol's friend. So, the documentary showed us, how difficult Carol's childhood was, and she transformed when she met Jack. And she probably transformed quite a few times with Jack, and then she transformed to being a single business owner. And, you know, now she's married again, and, you know, she's bringing a lot of attention to the Tigers. And, you know, Pluto has been her friend. Her Mercury's quite well aspected too. It does have the trine to Neptune and the sextile to Pluto. When Mercury and Neptune is trine, the person can be good at marketing. And we know that Carole's good at marketing. You know, her buddy Joe Exotic said she was good at marketing. You know, Joe hates her guts, but he says she's good at marketing. She's good at it. And we can see that in her chart. That's one of her gifts. You know, when Mercury is trine Neptune, details are not as important to a person with this aspect as much as the tone and the feeling of the story. So they're going to tell a story and they're going to make it good. And the Mercury trine Neptune makes great salespeople, great singers, great songwriters. You know, people who market ideals to the public. And so, you know, what you just heard me say is that it also creates very wonderful and believable liars. With both Neptune and Mercury being in water signs, Carole can become emotional telling her stories and bring about emotions in people when she tells the stories to them. And, you know, we saw all this in the documentary. So, anyhow, lastly, the good energies of Pluto and Mercury come to the apex of the YOD in Jupiter. So, you know, she's able to use her positive gifts of communication, of transformation, to come to the expansive and universal place that's so negatively aspected otherwise. This is her YOD coming to that point of the apex. So, you know, while she, you know, and I do think the documentary, you know, was part of her YOD. So it brought a lot of attention to her abundance. It was negative attention. She wasn't shown in a very good light. But, you know, her marketing and her obsession, you know, was part of what brought this on. And so, anyways, she has definitely brought more attention to the Tigers, even though it didn't show her in a good light. I don't think we've heard the last from Carole. But, I also don't think it's going to get much better for her from here. So, anyways, that is Carole Baskin. Next video will be about Carole and Joe's synastry, how their relationship works together, why they set each other off, and, you know, what all is going on with that. And so that's going to be pretty interesting. My website is up. I've got the links down below. Please check it out. Some really cool astrology stuff. This very cool clock is for sale there. So my Saturn is in Leo, and so I've got the structure of time with the sign of Leo. Helps me stay organized, stay on it. And anyways, also like and subscribe, comment, let me know what you thought. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. Thank you.